Hello everyone, thank you for checking out this video today about vortex filters for your koi pond. My name is Chris. Welcome to my channel, Jersey Shore Pondscapes Videos. So I've been professionally building koi ponds now for over 25 years, and I put together this channel to share with you some of the things I've learned, some helpful tips, and a lot of information to help you design, build, understand, maintain, and ultimately enjoy, your own pond. So please use the playlists here on this channel to help navigate and find your way around and help you find different videos that may be helpful to you. And yeah, we're going to dive into this today, talk about these vortex filters, because they're very simple in concept, but sometimes can be a little bit complicated when it comes to the installation and the function of them. So we're going to dive into all this, and I'm going to sit down here because I want to show you a bunch of pictures up on the screen here behind me and hopefully help you to understand all this, okay? So vortex filters basically in concept are very easy. It's basically a round cylindrical tank, okay, with a cone shape preferably on the bottom. And what happens is the water comes in a pipe from the side, okay, about midway up the tank, where the water can come in on the side of the tank and just circulate around like a big whirlpool, okay? As that water circulates around, round and around and around, all the solids will drain out of it to the bottom of the tank. On the top of the tank, there will be an overflow pipe, which can lead out to, preferably another filter tank. Whether a mechanical filter, biological filter, whatever we may have set up. We'll talk about all that. So again, concept really easy. Water comes in the side of this cylinder round tank, about midway in the water column. Okay, water comes in, circulates around the tank, solids settle out to the bottom, and then the clean water comes up to the top and overflows out the top pipe. Okay. So, I first learned about these vortex filters probably almost 30 years ago when I built my first pond for myself. I was really into koi ponds. I was really into bottom drains, and I found out that these vortex filters work great with bottom drains. So I went through all kinds of crazy channels to try to find a vortex filter. Right? So keep in mind, 30 years ago, a lot of this pond industry stuff was all pretty new, and things weren't as readily available as they are today. But I did get my hands on a nice vortex filter. I had a 3-inch bottom drain in my pond, because at the time that's about all I was able to find. And I ran a 3-inch pipe from the bottom drain of my pond, outside and up and into this vortex filter. From the vortex filter, the water came out of there and it went into another basically a 100-gallon Rubbermaid stock tank that I made into a filter, and I had the water come in that filter, go down to the bottom, and then flow up through filter pads and filter media like that. Just basic. But I learned a lot from having that vortex filter, and I learned that they really work very well. However, there are some tricks to it, okay? The water flow through it is really, really important. So if we pump too much water through it, the water in the tank just spins around really fast and goes out, okay? And we don't get as much settlement out of it in the bottom. If we pump the water in too slow, all right, then the water just goes around and around and around, which is great for settlement, okay? You're going to get the most settlement out of that. But the problem is now we're not filtering our pond at a rapid enough pace to keep up with itself, okay, if that makes sense. So it's a little tricky. We got to find that mid ground, that medium, ground, where we have enough water flow through the vortex filter to adequately keep our pond filtered properly, but yet allow enough of the settlement to come out of it. All right. So most commonly, these vortex filters are used in a chain of filter system, okay? A series of tanks. And it would always be the first in the line of filter tanks. Okay, reason being, it's just a settlement tank. Its purpose is to get all those solids and larger debris to settle out of the water before it gets into your whatever other type of mechanical, biological filter, whatever you're using. These tanks can be, usually a lot of these tanks are set up to be modified with bulkheads and fittings in different spots. So even though they are a round tank, most manufacturers equip them with flat areas where we can put bulkheads and put a pipe. So if we have a round tank here on my desk, okay, and we have the water coming in this way, we may want it going out that way, okay, or we may want it going that way. So you have the ability to put a bulkhead fitting on this side, or have, modify them in different ways. A good vortex filter gives you that ability to do that. Ideally, they should be set up in a bottom drain system, okay? You can set a pump to pump into them, okay? But if you're pumping into them, then your end result, your pipe out of the tank, whether this tank or your filter, whatever kind of filter comes after it, has to be just a gravity-fed pipe back to the pond. It's not going to be pumped back up to a waterfall or anywhere else like that. So for that reason, to gravity feed them in from a bottom drain directly into the side of that vortex tank, fill up the vortex tank, flow out of the vortex into the next chamber, out of that into the next chamber, 2, 3, 4, whatever, how many chambers you have, and then a pump, pull it out of the last chamber and pump it back, through UV lights, through bead filter, through whatever you wish, back to your pond, waterfall, stream, whatever. Like this picture shows back here behind me. Now, two things that I definitely recommend. One, to have a valve, whether a gate valve or a ball valve, in front of the vortex tank. So as your water comes from the bottom drain, we need a valve there before it gets into your vortex. Reason being, when we want to clean the vortex or clean any of the filter tanks, we need to be able to shut the water off, stop the water flow from the pond into that filter tank. Now, the other little crazy thing with these vortex filters is on the very bottom, where the cone is and all that debris settles, there is usually a drain pipe. Okay, and we want to put a drain pipe in there with a ball valve and whatever, that we can open it and close it and very simply just flush out all the garbage in the bottom of that tank. Really easy. However, great in concept, very difficult to achieve in the field. Simply because if we are putting these tanks in the ground, our ball valves are now 3 feet down underground. Okay, so we need to find a way to access that ball valve to be able to open and close it. And secondly, where is all that wastewater going to go if we're 3 feet underground? All right, we have to be able to drain these tanks in such a way that you know, that water out of the discharge pipe has a free flow out someplace, right, to drain and get rid of all the garbage. Unless your property's on a hill where we can trench out and come down on the hill and pump it down the hill, you know, it's difficult to use these drains in the bottom of the tank. Now, another option would be to use a sump pump inside, you know, shut the valves off, close the water supply from the pond, put a sump pump in there and suck all the garbage out and suck out all the water. Yeah, that's an option too, okay? Of course, it's much easier if we can just open that valve and just let all that water just go right out and carry all that sludge and debris and sediment out with it. So that's something that, you know, have to figure out on your own, in your own pond, your own property, how we're going to do that. Now, these filter tanks ideally need to be set up so that, especially if it's done with a bottom drain, okay, so that the top of the filter, the vortex filter, is a couple inches above the water level of your pond. Because what's going to happen is you have the water level of your pond, you're going to have a bottom drain, you're going to have your 4-inch pipe, 3-inch pipe, whatever it's going to be. I would recommend 4-inch coming up, coming into that tank, all right? And then that water is going to fill that tank up. So picture it as 2 cups of water with a straw connecting the 2 cups on the bottom, okay? 1 cup of water is your pond, 1 cup is the filter tank, and the straw is the bottom drain and the pipes connecting the 2, okay? If you pour water into that cup, your pond cup, all right, the water's going to go into the cup through the straw, and both cups are going to fill up at the same time. And they're going to fill up even and level, all right? So 1 cup is your filter tank, 1 cup is your pond. We need to make sure that that filter tank is a little bit higher, all right? The top of that tank is just a couple inches higher than the water level in your pond, so it doesn't overflow. Now, here's the trick. On the top of this filter tank, where we have this overflow pipe, okay, the overflow pipe may be a couple inches from the top of the tank. We need to make sure that the water level in the pond covers that overflow pipe, okay, but yet does not overflow the tank. That's key to setting up these filter tanks. Reason being, if the water level in our pond should drop, if it should evaporate and drop, okay, what's going to happen is your overflow pipe is here. When the pond's full, the water is going to be able to go through the pipe, okay? If the water level in the pond drops, the water level in the tank is going to drop. If the water level in the tank doesn't drop, we don't have a full flow of water through that pipe. So we may have the ability to bring in, I'm just going to throw a number out, 4,000 gallons an hour through our bottom drain into the vortex. But what's going out of that vortex is maybe, you know, 2,500 gallons an hour, because the water, we don't have a full, the bottom where the pipe is coming in, we have a full flooded pipe coming in. Where it's going out, it's not a full flooded pipe. It's only maybe halfway flooded, okay? So the water's just going through. The problem is there, the pump on the end is not going to be getting enough water. The filter tanks are not going to fill up as fast, and the pump's going to suck all the water out and be sucking air, okay? So we need to make sure that those tanks stay full. So I hope you understand all that, okay, that concept. It's really important, and it's something that happens a lot. You know, hopefully, God willing, you don't have a big leak in your pond, but even just through evaporation, your pond water level can drop, okay, a little bit. But an inch or two, right, an inch or two may not be a lot in the whole scheme of the pond during the hot summer. But if that water drops an inch or two and we don't have full water flow coming out of our vortex into the next chamber, then the pump is not going to be getting an adequate water supply. Okay, it all depends on what size pump you have too, of course, and all that. But again, the trick is make sure that you have a flooded pipe coming in and we have a flooded pipe going out. Now, as long as that vortex filter, the top of that vortex filter is always an inch or two, above the water level in your pond, it will not overflow. All right. Just some things to think about. So, like I said, it's very simple in concept, but can be a little difficult in use sometimes. Now, sometimes these vortex filters, the tanks themselves, can also be used, several of them in a line, as one an open vortex. The next one you could have some filter pads in it, like mechanical filtration in, and then maybe finally into another one that has a biological media in it. Each time the water comes out of your main vortex tank and it's going to go into the top of the next tank, we want to, a lot of these tanks have a baffle in them. All right, so the water comes into the tank, then there's a baffle that comes down, it goes halfway down to the bottom. And the purpose of that is to have the water come in, hit that baffle, and be forced down to the bottom and then come up through all the filter media. Then flow out the tank on the other side, okay? And then your final tank, it could come in the top, flow down, and have a pump pull it out of the bottom. Different ways to configure it, okay? I hope I'm not losing you. I'm trying here to explain things. I should really be trying to draw this stuff for you, but it's really difficult. So yeah, okay, some different things to think about. Now, all those filter tanks, if you're using a series of these, they all have to be perfectly level, and the idea is your larger settlement first tank, your vortex tank, will clean out all the larger debris, heavier debris, come out of that tank, go into the next one, which will be a finer filtration, and then go into the last one, which can be biological. Now, like I said, it all depends on your system. You could have a vortex tank with, one tank after it. You could have a vortex tank with 4 tanks after it, 5 tanks after it. Hey, more power to you, okay? Like I always say, you can never overfilter. So, if you have the room and the wayabouts to do it, do it. Now, herein lies the problem, okay? As I said, we cannot pump a ton of water or gravity feed a ton of water really fast through these tanks. The faster they go, the less they settle out, all right? So sometimes what we need to do in order to supply our pumps with enough water at the end, we may need 2 or 3 separate vortex tanks to bring in enough water for the pump at the other end, all right? I don't have exact numbers with me as far as, how many, there's so many different size tanks, okay? So as far as how much water we can pump through a given vortex tank is dependent on the size of the vortex filter, all right? The one I had was probably close to 3 feet round. I've seen them a little bit narrower, maybe 2.5 feet round. And I've seen them a good 4 feet, maybe more, 4.5 feet round. I had a client that had a big one, big 4.5 foot round tank. It had 2 4-inch pipes coming in on one side from the pond, and the outflow was a 6-inch pipe. Okay, my old one, I believe, was a 3-inch in and a 3-inch out. So again, there's different ways to do it. But as I'm saying, you know, through a smaller tank, sometimes we can't pump a lot of water. The amount of water that we need to adequately filter the size pond that we have through just one vortex tank, okay? We may need, you know, 2 or 3, and then from there, those 2 or 3 go into separate filters, and then one pump can pull them out of there. Depends on your setup, depends on how everything is put together. My goal here today is basically just to tell you what vortex filters are and how, you know, they can be set up in a basic, you know, setup. All right. I hope I gave you a little bit of insight without confusing you too much. You know, like I said, they're very simple in concept and they really work well. They really do. Now, over the course of, you know, the 20+ years that I've been doing all this, I honestly can only think of maybe 2 times where I came across clients, customers that had a vortex system set up on their pond. Like I said, the one was the big giant tank where we had like 4, you know, a 4-foot tank. And that went out of there and it went into another vortex, which was, you know, had filter pads and stuff in it and some ribbon or something. But that second tank was smaller. And then it had, you know, a pump pulling out of that and returning back. The other case was a setup on a pond where there was 3 vortex tanks, okay? The first one was simply vortex, the second one was filter pads, and the third one was a ribbon material. And then the pump pulled it out of the bottom of the last tank. So the water came into vortex, went around, went out, went down into the bottom of the next tank, came up through the filter pads, went out of that one, came into the top of the last tank, flowed down through the ribbon, and then the pump pulled it out of the bottom. And then, like I said, all valves on the bottom of those tanks. Now, that pond was actually built at a house that was on a side of a mountain, basically. So you had a big slope on their property. So they were able to leave those filter tanks up above the ground, okay, and level with the pond, which was at a higher level, and then it would drop down and the filter tanks were level, and then all the pipes came out of the bottom, they went underground, and then went out down the side of the property, down the cliff, so, you know, where it drained. So that worked great. Yeah, I mean, so many different ways to do it. So I hope that gives you some insight. I try not to confuse you, I really do. But I think I touched, you know, everything I wanted to here. Again, you know, just keep those vortex filter tanks just a bit higher than the water level of your pond, and make sure that the pipe out of the top, your outflow out of the top, is flooded, okay, when the pond is full. You know, and we got to keep our ponds full. Now, if you are pumping water through these, you know, it's a little bit different. The amount of water you pump in is the amount of water that's going to go out the other side. But it has to be just a gravity pipe back out, back to your pond. So again, we can't pump it up to a waterfall or anything. All right. So I hope that helped you out. Thank you very much for listening and for your patience. I hope it helped you out. I hope it gave you some insights. And, you know, please subscribe to the channel. Check out all my other videos. I really appreciate your support. And have a great day. Hopefully we'll see you back again in another video. Take care. Bye.